Part 1. The Alpha Fantasy. It started the way these things usually do. I got hurt. There wasn't one big heartbreak, no dramatic betrayal. Just a slow drip of rejection, invisibility, disappointment. I'd see guys walk into rooms and command attention. Girls leaning in when they spoke. Friends following their lead. They had something I didn't. Presence, power, confidence. Or so I thought. I stumbled onto the alpha male stuff through YouTube. At first, it felt like someone had handed me the manual to life. Be strong, be stoic, be dominant. Don't chase, don't simp, don't apologize. The world, apparently, rewarded the men who took it. The lions, not the sheep. It felt intoxicating. I started lifting 6 days a week. Fixed my posture, changed my voice tone, made eye contact longer than was comfortable. I began studying frame control, SMV, high-value behavior. I changed how I walked, how I texted, how I spoke to friends. I cut out softness, cut out hesitation, cut out anything that made me feel small. And you know what? At first, it worked. People noticed. I looked better. I sounded more confident. I stopped being the passive guy in conversations. Girls started paying more attention. I got matches I never would have gotten before. A few dates turned into nights I'd once only fantasized about. I started believing it. I am becoming alpha. The compliments felt like fuel. Friends saying, "You've changed." Guys at the gym asking for advice. Even strangers online liking my posts about mindset and masculinity. It felt like I'd cracked some ancient masculine code. Like I had finally escaped being average. But something else was happening underneath. The more I leaned into it, the less I laughed. The less I opened up. The less I allowed myself to be human. Vulnerability became weakness. Emotion became risk. I didn't want to feel things anymore. I wanted to win. Because here's the truth about the alpha fantasy. It doesn't end when you become stronger. It ends when you become harder. Harder to read. Harder to reach. Harder to care. The rules of the game. Every day, I woke up and reviewed the rules. Not literally, but mentally. The code I had built into myself. Never text first. Never explain yourself. Show strength, not doubt. Lead or leave. Always choose purpose over people. I treated every social interaction like a test of dominance. Eye contact was a battle. Smiles had to be earned. If someone interrupted me, I spoke louder. If a girl didn't reply, I pretended not to care and posted a thirst trap. I lived in a constant state of performance. Hyper-aware, always in control. There was no room for softness, and honestly, I liked that. At the time, it felt like evolution. Like I was rising above my old, weak self. But I didn't realize what I was trading for it. I stopped being close to my friends. Every hangout felt like a hierarchy. I started judging them for being too emotional, too beta, or too available. I pushed away people who knew the old me because I didn't want to be reminded that I had ever been vulnerable. With women, I stopped seeing humans and started seeing archetypes. High value, low value, red flags, green flags, LTR material, ONS potential. The game made everything simple, but also soulless. I wasn't connecting, I was measuring. Performance becomes identity. The strangest part? After a while, you start to believe this is just who you are. You forget that there was a time when you cried at movies, when you talked to your mom about your day, when you were awkward, kind, open-hearted. You bury that guy so deep under alpha conditioning that you can't even hear his voice anymore. But here's what they don't tell you when you start this journey. Becoming alpha is not about growth. It's about armor. And armor is heavy. You might look stronger. You might even feel invincible sometimes. But you're not free. You're hiding. Behind status. Behind aesthetics. Behind dominance. And every now and then, when you're alone, after the dopamine wears off, after the validation fades, a quiet question shows up. If I stopped playing this role, would anyone still love me? And worse, would I still love myself? There's a point in the alpha journey where you stop growing and start hardening. I didn't notice it at first. I thought I was still improving, still refining, still becoming that ideal man, untouchable, focused, respected. But underneath all the discipline and confidence, something darker had started to grow. I wasn't becoming strong. I was becoming emotionally unreachable. I stopped laughing the way I used to. It felt like a risk. I didn't want to be seen as silly or playful. Every emotion that didn't serve power, joy, fear, tenderness, awe, got filed under weak. I wasn't allowed to feel unless it was anger or drive. Everything else was noise. And the more I numbed myself, the more I thought I was evolving. You see, that's the seductive part. You confuse emotional detachment with maturity. You mistake avoidance for control. You call it stoicism, but it's really just fear with a six-pack and a clean fade. Losing people without even noticing. It didn't happen overnight, but over time, my relationships started to erode. I'd talk less, share less, listen less. I always had to be the one with the answer, the advice, the rational perspective. I couldn't just sit with people in their pain. I had to fix it or dismiss it. Friends began pulling away slowly. Some stopped reaching out. Others gave up trying to get through. They'd say things like, "You're different now," or "You don't seem to care anymore." And I'd shrug it off. They're just not on my level anymore. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew they were right. I had built walls so high, even I couldn't climb them. I had trained myself to be admired, not known. I could walk into any room and get attention. But when I left, I felt lonelier than ever. And when the loneliness got loud, I'd just double down. More gym, more silence, more control. Dating without depth. My dating life looked great on the surface. I had options. I knew how to flirt. I knew what to say, how to say it, when to pull away. I had become what I used to envy, the guy women chased. The one who wasn't too available, who had his own life, who could walk away at any moment. But the more I won, the less I felt. Every date was a power play. Every interaction was a strategy. There was no real vulnerability, only performance. No curiosity, just calculation. And slowly, the women I dated started to feel like mirrors. They only reflected back the image I was trying to protect. If they got too close, I'd push them away. If they didn't validate me, I'd move on. If they challenged the persona, the mask, I'd feel attacked. I wasn't connecting. I was managing impressions. And worst of all, I didn't even realize how empty it all was until I started waking up next to people and feeling absolutely nothing. Not even regret, just silence. The fear behind the frame. There's a concept in the alpha space called frame. It means holding your mental position no matter what. You don't react emotionally, you don't chase, you don't break composure. You control the room or you leave it. At first it feels powerful. People respect it, but if you take it too far, you start to live in a constant state of tension. You stop being present. You're always observing, always calculating, always ready to walk away. That's not peace, that's paranoia. I couldn't just be with people. I had to win every interaction. I had to make sure I didn't lose frame. Even with close friends, even with women I liked, I was never fully there. I was performing dominance instead of living authenticity. And you know what's at the core of all that frame control? Fear. Fear of being small. Fear of being laughed at. Fear of being rejected as you really are. So you build an identity that no one can touch, and then realize no one can reach you either. That's the cost of becoming untouchable. You stop being touchable. You become an image, a brand, a walking armor suit. And the person inside that suit, he starts to disappear. A moment that shook me. One night, a girl I'd been seeing for a few months said something that cracked my shell a little. We were sitting in her apartment, just finished eating dinner. I was relaxed, or at least pretending to be. She looked at me for a while, not saying anything, and finally said, "You know, I feel like you're never really here." I smirked, gave her some smooth, dismissive line. Something about how I'm just focused, how I don't waste energy on things that don't matter. She didn't push, she just nodded quietly. But after she fell asleep, those words wouldn't leave my head. You're never really here. Not just with her, with anyone, with myself. Always thinking about the next thing. Always managing image. Always performing. I had built a life that looked great on Instagram. But when the phone was down, so was I. That night was the beginning of the end. Not the end of the performance. That would take much longer. But the end of my belief that I was becoming something better. I wasn't evolving. I was escaping. The unraveling didn't happen with a breakdown. No crying in the shower. No dramatic collapse in public. It was quieter than that. More subtle and more painful. It began with boredom. Not the kind where you don't know what to do, but the kind where nothing touches you anymore. I had built the life, the body, the confidence. I had women in my phone, money in my account, respect in most rooms. I had achieved what younger me would have worshipped. But I wasn't proud. I was just numb. The dates felt repetitive. The wins felt shallow. The compliments were nice, but never enough. The things I used to chase, status, validation, female attention, became background noise. I was doing everything right, and yet it felt all wrong. Worse, I couldn't talk about it with anyone, because the moment you question the grind, you're seen as weak. The moment you admit to loneliness, you're slipping. The moment you want more than power, you're falling off your purpose. So I said nothing. I smiled. I trained. I kept the content coming, kept the stories sharp, the posture perfect. I kept being the man I thought everyone wanted me to be. But inside, I was running out of air. A war with myself. There's a quiet war that happens when you build an identity around performance. You start resenting the version of yourself that got you here. I'd look in the mirror and feel like I was staring at someone I created, not someone I was. My voice didn't even sound like mine anymore. My tone had changed. My words were curated. Even my emotions were filtered before I felt them. I began to hate the mask, but I was terrified of taking it off. Because what if I did, and there was nothing underneath? That was the real fear. That maybe I had faked it for so long, I forgot who I actually was. That maybe I wasn't strong, or stoic, or driven. Maybe I was just scared and pretending. Maybe the alpha I had become was nothing more than a shell over a lonely, angry kid who never got the love he needed. That's the danger with over-optimizing yourself. You can lose the humanity you're supposed to be optimizing for. The isolation of always being on. My daily life had become a brand. Even in casual conversations, I couldn't turn it off. I'd measure every word, every tone. Every moment was a chance to win or lose frame. I couldn't be tired or emotional, or confused or affectionate, not without overthinking it first. I started avoiding real intimacy, not because I didn't want connection, but because I didn't trust myself to have it. I was afraid I'd open up and lose my edge, that if someone saw the softness in me, they'd never respect me again. So I stayed distant. I'd ghost girls I liked because getting close made me anxious. I'd withdraw from friends because deep conversations required vulnerability. I'd even avoid family because they remembered the old me, the unguarded me, and that threatened the persona I had built. Every room I entered, I felt like a guest playing a character. I wasn't home anywhere, and slowly, the weight of pretending became unbearable. The break point. One night, I sat in my apartment in complete silence. No music, no phone, no notifications, just me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to distract myself. I just sat there. And what came out wasn't clarity. It wasn't peace. It was sadness. A deep, heavy, aching sadness. Not because I had failed, but because I had succeeded at becoming someone I didn't even recognize. I thought about the boy I used to be. Awkward, emotional, open-hearted. I thought about how I killed him off piece by piece in the name of strength, and I asked myself the question I had avoided for years. What if becoming alpha wasn't growth, but grief? Grief for the parts of me I had buried. Grief for the friendships I let die. Grief for the real love I never let happen because I was too busy trying to be untouchable. It hit me. I hadn't become the man I wanted to be. I had just become unwilling to feel. And when you can't feel, you can't live. Letting go, or trying to. That night didn't magically fix everything. I didn't wake up reborn. But it was the start of something honest. I realized that all the strength I had built meant nothing if I couldn't live with myself. So I started letting go. Slowly, I started saying, I don't know, when I didn't know. I started telling people when I was tired or sad or confused. I started messaging old friends and admitting that I missed them. I started showing softness even when my brain screamed that it was dangerous. It was terrifying at first, but also liberating. Because for the first time in years, I was moving towards something real. Not another persona, not another milestone. Just truth. Messy, imperfect, unfiltered truth. And the craziest part? No one left. Some people even said, "It's good to have you back." That's when I knew. I wasn't becoming weak. I was becoming whole. The first thing I had to accept was this: there's no going back. You don't unsee the world once you've seen it through the lens of dominance and control. You don't become innocent again, but you can become honest. You can start peeling back the layers. You can rebuild, not into who you used to be, but into someone real, someone whole. Rebuilding wasn't some spiritual awakening. It was awkward, quiet, uncomfortable. It started with small moments. Letting a joke land without trying to stay in frame. Asking someone how they were and actually caring. Letting myself cry when a song hit too deep. Talking to my mom without filtering my voice to sound masculine. Catching myself when I was about to give advice no one asked for, and just listening instead. At first, I felt weak doing those things. Then I realized something. Strength isn't in how much you can hold back. It's in how much truth you can hold. Redefining masculinity. I had spent years thinking masculinity was about control. Physical control, emotional control, social control. But now, I see it differently. Masculinity isn't dominance. It's integrity. It's the ability to show up as you are without hiding behind status or strategy. It's learning to protect, not manipulate. To lead, not perform. To feel fully, without being owned by the feeling. I used to think a real man never gets emotional. Now I think a real man doesn't run from what's real, even when it hurts. That doesn't mean being soft all the time. It doesn't mean abandoning discipline or strength. It means rooting those things in humanity, not insecurity. Not needing to dominate everyone to feel worthy. Not needing applause to know you matter. You want to be alpha? Be the kind of man people trust when everything falls apart. Not the one who barks the loudest when things are good. Learning to love without the game. Dating changed completely. It's not that I stopped being attractive or confident. Those parts didn't vanish. But I stopped trying to win. I stopped trying to convert women into liking me. I stopped running strategies. Instead, I showed up with curiosity. I asked deeper questions. I let myself be surprised. I let myself be awkward. I let myself not be in control. And that's when real connection started happening. And here's the truth I didn't expect. Real women, emotionally mature, grounded, self-aware women, see through the act. They're not impressed by the perfect posture or power silence. They're moved by presence, vulnerability, depth. I used to think being high value was about being wanted. Now, I think it's about being real enough to be known. Friendships with depth, not rank. One of the biggest gifts of unlearning the alpha performance was the return of true friendship. Friendship without pecking order, without trying to be the leader all the time, without mentally ranking who's more on purpose or more masculine. I stopped seeing my friends as competition and started seeing them as mirrors. Men on their own journeys, carrying pain I never asked about, fighting battles I never noticed when, I was too busy being impressive. We started having real conversations again about fear, regret, love, faith, family, doubt, purpose. Not every talk was deep, but every talk was available. No more performance, no more flexing, just space. That space, it healed more than I expected, because being strong in front of everyone feels good. But being soft in front of someone safe, that changes you. Self-worth. Without the metrics, the most dangerous lie of the alpha mindset is this: you have to earn your worth every day. Every gym session, every ignored message, every new match, every dollar. It all becomes a way to avoid the terrifying idea that maybe, just maybe, you're not enough. But what if you are? What if you're worthy without the car, the jawline, the cold stare? What if the whole point of life isn't to be above everyone, but to be with people, open, alive, present? I still go to the gym. I still believe in growth, in focus, in accountability. But not because I hate who I am. I do it because I care about who I am. There's a massive difference between self-improvement and self-rejection. To the guy still wearing the mask. If you're reading this and you're still in the grind, still chasing that perfect alpha image, I get it. I really do. It feels safe. It feels productive. It feels like the answer to everything that ever made you feel small. But ask yourself something. When you're alone, no phone, no audience, no attention, are you proud of who you are? Not what you've built, not what you've attracted, not what others see. You. If the answer isn't clear, maybe it's time to stop performing. Maybe it's time to start living. Because the real alpha, the real masculine energy, it's not in domination, it's in integration, where the tough and the tender meet, where discipline and compassion live in the same body, where strength no longer hides the fear, it holds space for it. Final thought. I didn't give up on becoming alpha. I evolved past the need to prove I ever was. And that freedom, that peace, no amount of clout, control, or conquest could have ever given me that.